We're talking about things like social norms and being able to understand why a group of people expect to talk about things they don't care about when they first meet each other instead of talking about passionate information.
At your age, probably going through severe challenges because you said you were noticing you were different. And to come to a place where you're like, yeah, this is what it is and I am okay. Because we're all unique in different ways, but we like to have this one way. We like to see people the way we are, right? To identify with them. And when you don't see people who are like us, we're looking for them. So now let's go back to what is autism? Because you said you had to look all of this up. And how is it separate from ADHD and other ways that maybe you show up?
I always like to go through the terms that everyone loves to use, right? So everyone likes to use neurodivergence now. That's the new big word, neurodiverse and neurodivergence, right? So basically, neurodivergence means that you have some type of neurological disorder. Your brain is what we like to call wired differently than the typical person. And so that can look like ADHD, that can look like bipolar disorder, that can look like autism, that can look like any neurodivergence, neurological difference in your brain. However, when people say on the spectrum, they're talking specifically about autism, which is autism spectrum disorder. Now, there was a time when you either had autism or you could have Asperger's, you can have, and all of that has now been combined into autism spectrum disorder, ASD. And there are different levels. I believe there's 5 categorically in the DSM-5. It's not just on your communication and your social norms, the way you follow social norms, the way you make connections. It also has to do with your ability to function in society. So activities of daily living. Are you stimming? Are you having sensory issues to where you can't actually function and do things that you need to do in your life? Now, why is all of that important? Well, because they do a system for each. So those numbers I gave you, those 5 levels, they do it for each. So, for example, one of my daughters is 3-2, meaning that for social norms, for communication, they said that her level was a 2, which is meaning that she's a little bit more high, what some people like to call high functioning, and what I like to call has less support needs in that particular field. But then in sensory and stimming and being able to function and do activities, they categorized her as a 3, meaning she would need more support in that particular area. So, and then my other daughter, Paris, whose minimum speaking, as I like to call it, she's 3-3. She's a 3 in both of those fields. And my psychologist, he actually made me laugh. He said, technically, we have to diagnose you for what you are now. He says, I don't know what we would have diagnosed you if you were a child, but as of right now, you are a 1-2. So for the category of stimming, of sensory needs, of being able to do activities of daily living, I am a 2. But for the things of like needing understanding social norms, being able to build relationships, being able to understand other people's feelings, I am more of a 2. So the autism affects our sensory. So what we input into our bodies is our sensory, your sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. But also you have internal senses that help dictate how you experience the world. And there are 3. There is your interoception center, which is basically what tells you, hey, I'm thirsty. Hey, I'm hungry. Hey, I have to use the restroom. So, hey, it's hot in here. Is anyone else hot? That's that internal system that's telling you what's happening with your body. And then you have your vestibular sense, which is your sense of movement from your body in relation to gravity on this planet. So you know how there's some people who love to be on a boat, and then there's some people who can get seasick. And then there's people who love to drive their car fast, and then there's me who always has their hands on the 10 and the 2 and very much follows the rules and the speed limit. And then you have people who love roller coasters, and you have people like me who can't even sit in a swing without feeling like they're dizzy or about to be nauseous. And so That has to do with your movements and how you experience movement in the world. It's called your vestibular sense. And then the last internal sense that you have is your proprioception sense. And when you think of this sense in the fact of your body, but movement. So what I mean by that is how you move. You can move your right hand in one way and move your left hand another way at the same time. So it's basically you internally sensing all of your body in relation to your body, right? And so why is that important? All of that together is how you experience the world, the input you're going to get from the world, and then what's also affected by autism is our perception. So we get that input, and then how we perceive that input may be different because of autism and rewiring. So we got sensory, we got perception, which moves us into motor skills, because if your proprioception sense is not wired as a typical person's, you may be overdoing things or underdoing things. You may be clumsy. You may walk on your toes instead of walking how other people walk. You may like to jump and spring and move. And so sometimes your motor skills, even things as simple as taking the toothpaste, opening the toothpaste and putting it on your toothbrush, may be difficult for you. So we have sensory, perception, motor skills. The next thing is going to be executive function. So think of executive function like the traffic controller of your brain. Okay. So it's three main things that executive function are over. So the first thing is your working memory. The next one is going to be your mental flexibility. So your ability to adapt to change. And then the third one is, my brain went blank again. That's autism coming in. Mental flexibility. Has to do with time management and organization. There we go. So your working memory, your mental flexibility, and then your actual time management, right? All of that is connected to your executive function. So anything from being able to be organized, to prioritize things, being on time, knowing how long it takes you to actually do an activity, not getting distracted, being able to stay focused, but being able to be flexible. So if you're focused and something happens and you need to close down and move on and transition to something else, being able to do that, right? All of those things are connected to your executive function. And those of us who are autistic struggle with that. However, people with ADHD, that's the majority of their disorder. They struggle with that a lot. And sometimes you'll have people who have autism and ADHD. Sometimes you'll have someone who just has autism, but maybe they struggle with rigidity, which is that difficulty with having that mental flexibility and being able to adapt to change. No, I like my routine the way I like my routine. I want this to go like this and like this. And if that doesn't go like that, I'm going to react instead of respond, and I might get some fight, flight, freeze, or fun. That's what's going on. So we have sensory, perception, motor skills, executive function, and the last one is communication. And when we're saying communication, we're not just talking about verbal speech. We're talking also about nonverbal communication. We call it alternative or augmentative communication. We're talking about things like social norms and being able to understand why a group of people expect to talk about things they don't care about when they first meet each other, instead of talking about intense, passionate information. So like just those simple social norms that society does that sometimes do not make sense to an autistic person because our wires get crossed. So we don't understand why I would tell a white lie to save your feelings, because wouldn't it be better to just tell you the truth in a kind and firm way so that you're not embarrassed later than to spare your feelings now and you be embarrassed later? So those little nuances sometimes we struggle with. Social norms, communication, perception, sensory, executive function, and motor skills. All of those are affected. And we wish the world could be very easy and that those will all be affected in the same way, but they're not. It's a spectrum, meaning when we say spectrum, we mean on each of those things, and you could meet one autistic person and they could have more support needs or less support needs in each of those things. So I have 3 autistic people in this house, And we all show up very differently on that spectrum.
If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website, yogipatel.com.